but that kind of leads us to sort of the future of SARMS. And there's been a lot of talk about a movement to change the status of SARMs from what they are now, which is an unapproved drug that would be illegal to market as a dietary supplement product or as a research chemical under circumstances that show that that's bogus, that's a sham or a ruse, to change the status to add SARMs to the Controlled Substances Act. And so, you have this push for what's called the SARMS Control Act. And it was introduced, I think it was originally by Sheldon Whitehouse and Orrin Hatch, and then now is introduced in the Senate by Chuck Grassley of Iowa. And I believe it's Senate Bill 2895, as I recall. And the effect of that act, that bill, if it were to pass and become law, would be to make SARMs in the same Schedule III status as anabolic steroids and, treat them the same way.
And if I can interject too, I mean, an issue like this, unfortunately, because again, I'm not for the criminalization of performance enhancement drugs, but something like this is going to get bipartisan support like nothing. It's going to happen. And I think off camera also we spoke about some big agencies that are very supportive of this.
Yeah, I think there's three kind of tiers of support for it. And the first, I guess, is the anti-doping agencies, because like we said before, you've got athletes testing positive for SARMs, and that doesn't help sport. It undermines the confidence of the public and the integrity of sport. And so if there's a way of policing better drug-tested sports, they want to do it. And this is essentially how anabolic steroids got controlled. If, back in the late 80s, it was the sports anti-doping agencies and those who were against any kind of unfairness or cheating in sports that really pushed Congress to criminalize anabolic steroids back in 1990. And so those same sorts of, intents and interests are now trying to get SARMs also treated in that same way. And then, of course, you've got some folks in the dietary supplement market, including some of the trade groups. Now, you would think that trade groups would be interested in protecting people who are in the dietary supplement industry, but of course, they don't see that people who are selling SARMs as dietary supplements are legitimate in the first place, so they're not looking to protect them. And so from their perspective, SARMs as supplements is just, a black eye to the industry. If we can get rid of them by criminalizing and letting the DEA have authority, which is one of the effects of controlled substance status, is that it switches from an FDA issue, which, is one level, to a DEA issue with potentially more muscle behind it. And so they're in favor of it. And then, of course, you got public health watchdogs that are looking and saying, hey, some 15-year-old kid's going to go online and buy SARMs and then use it. And we don't know where it was made or how it was made or whether it could hurt his health. And so getting this off the market by making it a controlled substance is seen as a good thing. So when you put together the various special interests and public interests that would support the criminalization, which is essentially the process when something becomes a controlled substance, of SARMs, it's got all the earmarks to suggest that it should happen. Has not happened yet. Congress probably is a little busy right now. Global pandemic probably slowing a lot of things down, but that's something that could happen.
Absolutely. And we had said that we were only going to talk about SARMs for 10 minutes, but I'm pretty sure we did more than that. So I do appreciate that. But in the word of the great Bob Ciccarello, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about,
Bob Chick. The only other, before we do that,
okay, please,
the only other thing I'll say just quickly, Christian, about SARMs is, with all of, it sounds great, all of the interests that I described to support the criminalization of SARMs. There are some reasons for it. Why I have issues with it is simple. We're at a time in American history when there's a growing much larger and constantly increasing percentage of the population that has come to realize that the war on drugs hasn't worked. That there are major problems with the war on drugs. And in many ways, we are scaling that back. And we are now diverting more cases to drug diversion programs, that, locking people up in mass incarceration for nonviolent crimes, that's not something that really did a lot of good, hasn't changed the rates of drug addiction in the United States, didn't really work, but has created a whole population of disenfranchised people, done a lot of bad things. And so as we're scaling that back, philosophically, why are we now adding a whole nother component to the war on drugs, which is what criminalizing SARMS would do, of, expanding when we're trying to contract it. And the effect of criminalizing SARMS is that not only are the manufacturers, the marketers, the people who are selling it on the hook, but the end user is now on the hook. Because when you make something a controlled substance, you turn the end consumer into a criminal. The mere possession of a SARM, any amount of a SARM, something you bought last year, 2 years ago, that's sitting in your car, that's sitting in your cabinet in your kitchen, if this law passes, that becomes a federally criminalized drug, and you become a federal drug criminal. Yeah. I'm not sure we really want to do that to health-conscious people. I understand we don't want SARMs on the market, but there are already laws that prevent that from drugs being sold, masqueraded as research chemicals, or non-compliant dietary supplement products from hitting the market. I'm not big on criminalizing otherwise law-abiding healthy people.